Welcome to mywebcollege.com, the home of sound, sensible, and cost-effective online training. Today's course provides you with the background and tools that management needs to make the workplace safer in terms of violence and harassment. This course will be your guide to help your workplace comply with the provisions of Bill 168, an amendment to the Occupational Health and Safety Act, often referred to as OHSA. MyWebCollege.com's online program is designed to help employers comply with changes in the Occupational Health and Safety Act so you don't run afoul of the law and people in your workplace can go about their jobs and duties without fear of violence or harassment. In this course, we will explain how Bill 168 came about and what changes you'll have to make as an employer. The legislation goes far beyond just getting your managers and workers trained. There are also requirements to know whether there are any existing situations that could lead to trouble. Then there are the things you have to do to keep potentially violent or harassing situations from arising. That's a lot to keep track of, and that's why MyWebCollege.com developed this program to help you deal with Bill 168 in a simple, cost-effective, and yet comprehensive way. This course will explain in simple terms what your obligations are as an employer. It will provide an explanation of the rights of your employees. We'll also provide guidance on how to prepare your workplace for Bill 168 and provide you, as our customer, with model policies, surveys, programs, and reports that you need to fulfill your obligations. An explanation of Bill 168. Most other jurisdictions in Canada incorporated violence in the workplace in their occupational health and safety laws before Ontario. The thinking is, if workers need to be protected against hazards in the workplace, such as chemicals or falls, it only stands to reason that workers should be provided with protections against violence and harassment. The Ontario Legislature approved Bill 168, the Occupational Health and Safety Amendment Act, Violence and Harassment in the Workplace 2009, officially making it the law of the province on December 15, 2009. The Ministry of Labour is gearing up to enforce Bill 168's provisions vigorously, but there's a grace period until June 15, 2010 for workplaces to put programs in place, and that's a very good thing because the violence and harassment in the workplace amendments are numerous, complex, and will change the way organizations operate both within their premises and wherever their employees work. OHSA, Occupational Health and Safety Act, creates a series of rights for employees, including the right to refuse work where a reasonable person would consider the situation to be unsafe. It imposes obligations on the part of the employer to take all reasonable steps to create a working environment that is free of violence and harassment. The rights and obligations are triggered when an incident occurs, depending upon the circumstances and how they are defined under the new law as violence or harassment in the workplace. Employers who are already burdened by previous OHSA regulations may wonder why Ontario is imposing yet another new law. It may surprise some people, but Ontario is among the last jurisdictions in Canada that have included workplace violence in their occupational health and safety legislation. Many observers believe Bill 168 was ultimately brought about because of highly publicized events, such as the tragic death of Lori DuPont. DuPont, 37, was on duty as a nurse at Hôtel de Grace Hospital in Windsor on November 17, 2005, when Dr. Mark Daniel, who also worked at the hospital, stabbed her to death. A coroner's jury stated that, despite significant and documented complaints of serious disruptive behavior problems and infractions of the hospital policies and bylaws by Dr. Daniel in the spring of 2004, there seemed to be much confusion and indecision as to how to deal with this physician. Bill 168 seeks to end that confusion. At the heart of the legislation are the definitions of what actions constitute violence and harassment. These definitions are all important because if an action fits the definition for violence or harassment, the employer is then compelled to act as prescribed by the law and in accordance with the organization's own violence and harassment prevention policy. Violence is defined under Bill 168 as A, the exercise of physical force by a person against a worker in a workplace that causes or could cause physical injury to the worker, and or B, an attempt to exercise physical force against a worker in a workplace that could cause physical injury to the worker. An important thing to remember about the definition of workplace violence is that it is defined only as an action that involves physical harm or injury. Harassment is now defined in OHSA as an act by someone who engages in a course of vexatious comment or conduct against a worker in a workplace that is known or ought reasonably to be known to be unwelcome. The approach is similar to human rights codes, which describe a range of incidents such as bullying, teasing, threatening, verbal abuse, gossiping, intimidation, and repeated unwanted sexual approaches as potential incidents of harassment. The harassment amendments to OHSA go a step further by not limiting what the basis of the harassment may be. Human rights codes are restricted to acting on complaints based on prohibited ground of discrimination such as sex, age, ethnicity, or religion. It's been generally accepted in the courts that normal supervision and direction of employees do not constitute harassment. However, until these points have been tested in the courts, employers are advised to ensure that direction and discipline are kept at a high professional level. Congratulations, you have completed Part 1. Please click on the button or call the number below to place your order for the Complete Bill 168 training program.